Time for another board game review, and this time we have the game Kemet. This was sent to me by Asmodee, and is designed by Jacques Barriot and Guillaume Montiague. Probably pronounced those wrong, I'm sorry. In the mythic age of ancient Egypt, the powerful gods throw their troops into epic battles to demonstrate their power. In the desert or at the feet of gigantic temples, they use their many powers to support their troops, summon and control mythological creatures, and gain the upper hand. Let me show you how to play. So the goal of the game is to win 8 victory points in short mode or 10 victory points in the long mode. And you choose which mode you start or you're going to play before you start the game. The board is divided into desert spaces and special spaces. As you can see by the line boundaries here, this board is actually quite long. But you can kind of see all the different spaces on it. This area here is a city. Each player possesses a city composed of 3 districts. Each district is a space and contains a room for a pyramid. And each district is also surrounded by a wall. So these are temples, and if you control a temple, you get 1 temporary victory point and prayer points. Furthermore, if you control at least 2 temples at the end of the day phase, you get a permanent victory point. The Sanctuary of All Gods up here, right here, is not considered a temple. If the player controlling it sacrifices 2 units, he gains a permanent victory point. Every temple and some of the spaces have obelisks, and then harbors allow the crossing of the Nile. They don't form a separate space. Each player has 3 pyramids, white, red, and blue. They allow you to buy power tiles. The level of the pyramid is equal to the number visible on top, so it can go up to 4. If it's level 0, it isn't on the board. It stays in your reserve until it evolves into level 1. Each pyramid must be placed in a different district in the player's city, like so. Each little figurine represents a unit, and all the player's units in one space form a troop. So this would be a troop right here. 1 troop cannot contain more than 5 units, so you can never have more than 5 units on a single space. This is the biggest that this troop could be. Prayer points are the primary resource of the game. They allow players to perform different actions, and they're represented by an ankh. You can never possess more than 11 prayer points, even with power tiles. So this sort of helps you keep track of how many power points you have during the game. Several objectives and events allow you to gain victory points. Square victory points, like this, are permanent and cannot be lost ever. But round victory points are temporary and can be lost, usually as a result of an invasion. Victory points are called VP, and their symbol is this eye symbol. These cards are divine intervention cards. They all do different things. There's 35 of them. And the big meat of the game are these power tiles up here. Power tiles significantly change your abilities and can modify several rules of the game. There are 3 colors of power, and they all correspond to your different pyramid colors. The powers families are composed of powers from level 1 to 4. If you can look here, this tells you the power of the tiles. There are 4 cards per level, so 16 powers for each color. Each player gets an individual board, 5 action tokens, an ankh marker that you put on the 5 for the power points, or prayer points scale, not power points, prayer points. You get 12 units, 10 of them you can put in the city with districts with a pyramid, with 5 units per space, and 2 of them stay in the reserve. So if this is blue player's city, they could do 1, 2, maybe 2 here, 3 here, something like this, and distribute their units in the districts that have pyramids. Each player also gets 6 battle cards, and like I mentioned before, the 3 pyramids. You also get to start with a random DI, or Divine Intervention card. We'll call them DI cards from here on out. Randomly determined turn order, and then you can choose to allocate your points for your pyramids with the 2 possible combinations. You can make them all 1, 1, 1, like I have here, or you can make one of them 2, one of them 1, and one of them 0, meaning it would be off the board. That way you could kind of get a head start on red powers or something. Or you could make the blue one 2 and this one 1. It's up to you. I'm going to make these just the general 1, 1, 1 for now. Now the game is played in succession of night and day phases until at least 1 player wins the game. During the night phase, there's a distribution of 2 prayer points, distribution of divine intervention cards, night powers effects, and then determining the turn order. During the day, the action phase, you get to use your action tokens, and then you get to attribute your prayer points and your permanent victory points during the day. So let's go over the night phase. First, every player gets 2 prayer points. You start with 5, and then you could get 2 more here. If you have other power tiles that let you get prayer points, you can also get bonuses. But for now, everyone gets 2 prayer points. Every player then receives a random DI card. There's no limit to how many of these you can have in your hand. Playing DI cards doesn't count as an action, and it's possible to play several of these in the same phase, even with the same effect. Effects are cumulative. A played DI card is discarded face down, and when the draw pile is empty, you just shuffle it and create a new draw pile. You can also only play DI cards at the appropriate time. So this one can only be played during the day phase in the player's turn except in a battle. This one, with this symbol, can be played during an opponent's turn except a battle. And then this symbol means you can play it during a battle. And I'll go over the meanings of these cards. This one lets you destroy one enemy unit with raining fire. This one gives you a +2 damage boost for that particular battle. And this one can cancel the effect of a DI card just played. You play it during an opponent's turn to cancel their card. There's a whole bunch of DI cards. We might go through some of those later, but this gives you an idea of what you can do with these cards. After everybody receives their DI cards, then each player applies any effects of their power tiles that have the knight symbol. For example, this power tile here is the High Priest, and during the night phase, as you can see by the symbol, you gain 2 additional prayer points during the prayer point distribution. So this is just an extra bonus for nighttime. Once you've distributed all the prayer points, the DI cards, and resolved the power effects, then you determine the turn order. Whoever has the fewest victory points gets to choose the order of the entire turn. In case of a tie, whoever played previously earlier in turn order gets to choose the order. For the first turn, it's randomly determined, but later turns, if you're losing, or not losing, but I guess have the least amount of points, you get to choose who gets to go in what order. Now let's go into the day phase. Each player has 5 action tokens, and in turn order, each player is going to put down 1 action token on one of the action spaces of his individual board and immediately apply the effect. This is repeated until everyone uses their action tokens for 5 turns. Now, this is important. The action space must be empty. It's impossible to put down 2 action tokens on the same space. And also, at the end of the 5 turns, each player must have placed at least 1 token in each of the first 3 levels of the action pyramid on his individual board. So you have to make sure you have to do 1 of each action in these levels. The golden space here at the top is only used for the divine willpower. Golden chip. Now let's go through some of these actions. Here is the pray action. If you put an action token here, you immediately gain 2 power. Not power, prayer. Prayer is power, I guess. This is the raising pyramid action. If you put a token on here, you can increase the level of one of your pyramids. So let's say I really want to go for maybe white skills. I can turn this up to a 2. You can only raise 1 pyramid with this action. However, you can raise a unique pyramid by several levels in 1 action. The prayer cost is equal to the level the pyramid is being raised to. So if I wanted to raise this to a level 2, I would need to pay 2 prayer points. And if I had enough, if I wanted to keep going and raise it to 3, I'd have to spend 3 more prayer points. So 5 prayer points total. Pyramids let you teleport to an obelisk for 2 prayer. So I could spend 2 to send some guys over here. They allow you to buy power tiles of the same color and level. So with the level 3 white pyramid, I could buy any of these or below. And if you ever get your pyramid up to level 4, you get a temporary VP. Now, if a player ever controls an opponent's pyramid, like let's say the black player's troops invade, they get the benefits of that pyramid, even the temporary VP of the level 4 pyramid. As long as the pyramid is controlled by an opponent, you lose all the benefits of that pyramid. These actions down here let you buy a power tile of that color, white, red, or blue. You can purchase 1 tile of that color, so if you want to buy another power of that same color, you gotta wait till the next turn. In order to purchase a power tile, you must have a pyramid of the same color and same level equal to that power. So let's say I wanted to buy a white power tile. And I have a level 4 pyramid over there. The cost is equal to its level, so if I want to buy a level 4 white tile, I would pay 4 prayer, and then I can pick up the tile permanently. Now, you can never purchase and gain 2 identical power tiles. Some of the power tiles are the same, you can't buy them, you can't buy doubles. And even if they're different colors, like some red or blue cards of the same power, you can't double up on those. This action is the recruit action. You can spend however much power or prayer you want to recruit that number of units. So if I spend 2 prayer, I can add 2 units to the board. You can put them in any of the districts of your city, so you could do maybe this and this. If you're controlling an opponent's district, the controlling player can't recruit units there. You can only recruit in your own city. And the controlled player can recruit units as normal, which will immediately trigger a battle if that happens. And finally, we have the move action. This lets you move 1 troop. It's not mandatory to move all the units of the troop. You can leave some of them on your way. Furthermore, the player can gather units from spaces on his way as long as you don't exceed the movement capacity. So by default, you move your troop 1 space. However, if you have power tiles or creature abilities or a DI card, you can actually increase your movement. So let's go over troop movement. You can move 1 or several of your units to an adjacent space like this. So you could move all of them, or you could move some of them, whatever you want. It's possible to cross the Nile between 2 harbors connected by an arrow, so I can move them over here for 1 space. If I have troops on a pyramid, I can teleport them by paying 2 prayer to go to any obelisk. So I could go, let's say, whoop, up here. So within the limits of those movement capacities and resources, you can alternate between pyramid teleportation, ground transportation, and harbor crossing in the same movement without any restriction. Teleporting doesn't consume any movement capacity. Player cities are surrounded by walls. It's only possible to enter another player's city if the troop begins its movement from a space adjacent to the city wall. Basically, you can't move and then go into someone's city in the same action. So you gotta stop here. And whenever you move, if you pass through or reach a space occupied by an opponent's troop, a battle must be resolved and the movement ends. So if we cross the Nile into here, bam, it's time to fight. At the beginning of a battle, the attacker and the defender should each choose 2 battle cards. The first card is immediately discarded face up or face down. And the second card is played in the battle. Let's say red chooses this card. You can also add any DI cards you want hidden underneath your battle card, like this one, which would add 2 damage or 2 attack to your number. Once you've selected your cards you're going to play and the cards you're going to discard, these can be face up or face down depending on how you want to play the game. But then it's time to reveal. Bam, bam. Let's take a look. Just to explain what the battle cards mean, this is the strength card, or strength value, this is the damage value, and this is the protection value. So let's calculate our battle value. First, you count how many units you have. Red has 2 units, and they have 4 strength. That's 6. If they had any power tiles, attack or defense bonuses, they would add those onto it. In this case, there are none. If they had any creatures in battle, they would add those as well, but they don't have any. And then for the DI cards, this is actually not a strength value modifier, but a damage value modifier. So just based off this, red has 6 strength. If we calculate green's value, they have 3 units, plus 4, so they have 7 altogether. Whoever has the higher battle value wins the battle. If there's a tie, the defender wins the battle. In this case, green would win. However, with this damage card, after the red player pays the prayer to use this card, they can kill 3 of green's units, and green will kill 1 of red's units. If green had played a card with protection value, they could have blocked some of that damage. This would block 2 damage. So it's technically possible for the winner to lose all their units, but they still win the battle. If let's say the battle had gone differently and green had won with at least 1 unit left, he would get a permanent battle VP. An attacker who loses a battle doesn't win any battle VP, and defenders don't win VP even if you win. You have to attack in order to get the VP for battle. The defeated player must decide between recalling his troop, which I'll explain in a second, or retreating. If you decide to retreat, the winner gets to choose the adjacent space, free of any units, to where the opponent's troop will be repelled. If there are no empty adjacent spaces, then you can't retreat. After a battle is done, both the winner and the loser can choose to recall surviving units to their god. So they could sacrifice their units, and they'll receive 1 prayer point for every unit recalled. These are put back in the player's reserve, and they can be available for recruitment later. You can't choose to split the troop by recalling some units and leaving others. You gotta either sacrifice all of them, or leave all of them. Now let's go over creatures. There are 7 creatures, and they have really cool figures. They grant several advantages to the troops which travel with them. You acquire these by purchasing the corresponding power tile. So let's say a player bought this deep desert snake. Then they get to have this little figure. Once you buy the creature, you can immediately put it down in one of your 3 city districts if you have at least 1 unit in the district. So let's say player blue bought this creature. He could put it in here. Otherwise, you place it in front of you on the power tile. Now, a player can never have more than 1 creature on a given space, even if it's in one of your city districts. A creature doesn't count as a unit, so it doesn't count towards the 5-unit limit. So actually, I could add it to these guys. And in battle, only its bonuses are added to the battle value. It doesn't increase the number of units. A creature can never be destroyed. If the last unit with a creature is destroyed, it just immediately gets put back in the city, in a district with at least 1 unit. If it's not possible, put it back on your power tile. A creature in the reserve will return to the board in one of your districts when you use the recruit action. And if several creatures are in the reserve, you can choose which one of them you want to put back first. So if we look at the land snake card, he gives you a +1 movement to your troops, so your troops can start moving faster. Also, he can cancel any other creature effect in battle. If we want to look at one that can actually help in battle, this is the Ancestral Elephant, and he has a +1 strength in battle to your troop, and also a +1 movement and a +1 protection. So he's a pretty good, well-rounded creature. Now, at the end of a battle or movement, if you control a temple, you get to pick up the temporary VP for the corresponding temple. To control it, you gotta have at least 1 unit on it. When there's no unit left in the temple, you gotta give back the VP. When all players have finished their actions, the distribution of the prayer points and the permanent victory points can start. The player controlling the Delta Temple may withdraw a unit from the temple and put it back in their reserve, and then they receive 5 prayer points. Players that are controlling any temples will receive prayer points depending on how many is on the temple. If any player controls the Sanctuary of All Gods, they can withdraw 2 units and put them back in their reserve and receive 1 permanent victory point. And any player who controls at least 2 temples, here we see the black player has this temple and this temple, will receive a permanent victory point for controlling those temples. Now, as soon as any player has at least 8 victory points, or 10 if you're playing the long game, at the end of a day phase, you are declared the winner. If there's a tie, the winner is the player with the most VP. If there's still a tie, the player with the most battle VP. And if there's still another tie, the player who played earlier in the previous day phase. So that's the game, but let me show you some of the power tiles, because that's where the real meat of the game is. I'm not going to show you every single tile, because there's 48 of them. But I grabbed some of each color, and let's just go through some of these. This is the charge card. You gain 1 strength in battle when you're attacking. This is the Carnage card. In battle, all your troops gain 1 damage. Here's the Blades of Neath. In all battles, all of your troops have +1 strength. And here's the Initiative tile. And when you're attacking, you can destroy 2 units from the target troop before the beginning of the battle. So red's got a lot of these combat heavy ones. For some of the blue power tiles, you got the Defense card. This lets you gain 1 strength in battle when you're defending. Here's Legion. You can now have 7 units in 1 troop instead of 5. Here is just a victory point. This gives you a victory point towards the end of the game, victory condition. And this is Act of God. You can take an additional silver action token. This lets you use more actions during the day phase. And finally, here are some of the white tiles. Here's Priest. When you use the pray action, you get an extra prayer during that, which is pretty handy. Here's Crusade. You gain 2 prayer for each unit you destroy in battle. Here's Hand of God. During the night phase, you can raise a pyramid by 1 level for free. Here's another monster. This is the Mummy. For the linked troop, it's a +1 movement capacity, +2 strength, and +1 DI card during the night phase. That's pretty handy. You get a little bonus in nighttime. That's just a taste of some of the powers in the game, but as you can see, some of them are pretty powerful. But yeah. You go around and attack each other and get those victory points and control things, and that's the game. One of the game's biggest appeals, but also maybe an overwhelming part of the game, is how many ways you can get victory points. You can get them for winning battles, controlling temples, buying tiles, building pyramids up. There's a lot to keep track of, and it can be easy to accidentally let someone slide up past you while you're focused on another thing. I enjoy how aggressive the game is. It's constantly encouraging you to fight your enemies, because you get permanent victory points if you win on the offense. You don't get points if you're on defense. So I kind of like that in an area control game like this, where you're just like attack, 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 get those points. With teleporting, you're constantly at risk of getting attacked because there's obelisks all over the map. It's not like other war games where you can just pile up big piles of soldiers and get into long slogs of fights. It's just like, bam, I'm here, bitch, let's go. You only have 5 units per troop, and it's a simple but satisfying battle system to make sure that the skirmishes go quick. I like the idea of how one stat will determine the winner of the fight, but the damage stats determine how many soldiers die. I think that's pretty clever. You can lose the fight, but destroy your opponent even if they win the battle. With 12 units total, you always feel stretched out on this map. You don't ever feel secure enough anywhere. It's something I enjoyed about the game, and at the same time kind of wish that there were more units so I could build up bigger armies, but I get that that's not what this game is about. It's not about building up big armies. It's about using what little you have the most effectively and strategically. The whole night and day theme feels pretty weak to me. Like, you're basically on nighttime, you're just getting stuff. It doesn't really feel like night and day. It just feels like preparation phase and action phase, which is what it is. I just think it's kind of silly they call it night and day, but you know, whatever. It's fine. It's kind of goofy. I like that you really have to plan your actions. I like the requirement on the pyramid where you have to use all 3 floors, because similarly to how you feel like you never have enough units, you really feel like you don't have enough actions, and you got to strategize accordingly. One thing I didn't really like is how limited it feels for movement. Only 1 space per turn is kind of rough, especially if you have to take into account the walls of the cities. Like, if you want to go into a city, you got to get in front of the city first. You can't go into the city with 1 movement. Teleporting is so much better to get around that it almost makes you not want to move other ways, because otherwise you just got to slog up to those spaces. The power cards are very meaty. They give you pretty amazing abilities. It really feels like a race sometimes for who can get specific cards first. It can be a little overwhelming at first because there's so many cards, and they don't have text, they have iconography, so you're gonna have to pass that guidebook around and look at all 48 tiles. Some of them have the same abilities, but they're still, and the iconography is relatively straightforward, but you are gonna have that sort of initial time of the game where you're all like, what does this one do? What does this one do? You know how I feel about text. I get it. It's easier to translate into other languages if you don't have text on the cards. I prefer text. I think it makes things clearer. Whatever, that's just a personal preference. In a lot of ways, the game can feel overwhelming with how you feel like you're constantly at risk of being attacked, how many ways you can get points, how many different powers there are. But if you like the idea of a very aggressive area control game with lots of fun powers and a constant tension of feeling you don't have enough units here or there, then this is the game for you. Just be warned, you're going to be attacking each other a lot. Attacking. So if you don't like that type of game, if you aren't a confrontational person, this might not be the game for you. I enjoyed the game. Maybe a little bit too many pieces to fiddle around with, but overall, once you get going, it's pretty satisfying, and the powers are fun. So I had a good time with it.